Good afternoon. Drew Mitchell here again, Medham's Help Desk. This is the staff refresher webinar. We're going to be going over all the different highlights of the staff section in NEO. I'm going to start with a few quick bullet points here. I'm sure most of you are familiar with this, but again, staff isn't a personnel system. It's not tied to Maine PERS retirement. It's just to track your actively employed staff. The data collected in staff is used for both EPS and certification needs, as well as state and federal reports. All staff that are employed by the school administration unit must be entered into NEO staff, in addition to all contractors employed in a position required for EPS reporting, and anyone who has sustained direct unsupervised access to students need to be entered. You're going to want to include any contracted staff that are considered part of regular operations, That includes your bus drivers, your nurses, your psychologists, physical therapists, staff as well that are employees within the district that have district contracts. That would be like anyone with a pre-K program, school security. You don't need to put anyone in that isn't considered part of normal operations. That would be people like electricians or carpenters performing on-site work. That sums up that pretty much. We're going to go ahead and get into the staff portion of it here. So when you log into NEO, if you have access to staff, you'll see it listed on your dashboard or in the bar running across the top. Here you can see it as well. If you don't have this option when you sign into NEO, it means you don't currently have access, and your superintendent's office will need to submit an access request to the Medham's Help Desk so that we can grant you that access. When you get into NEO staff, you're going to see a lot of options at the top. We're going to first start talking about staff search and SAU search and the difference. Underneath manage staff, you've got those two options. Staff search would be used for primarily two different options. One would be if you are hiring a new employee, you're going to go to staff search, or if you need to make changes to the first screen when you create a staff member, that would be their highest degree earned. You can go in there and take a look. When you're looking up new staff, you need to include all three options here: first, last, and date of birth, or staff ID. If you try to do a search without all three of these options, you're going to get an error message. Go in here, you have an option to view or edit. We're going to do edit. So again, if you need to make a change on this first screen to an existing employee, this is where you're going to go. Or if you're adding a new employee, this is where you're going to go. So you need to make a name change, gender change, or highest degree earned will be done here. If you need to change the date of birth or social security number, that will require you to contact the Medham's Help Desk. Just send us an email letting us know you need to make that change, and we'll call you. We'll call the help desk. We can't take it over email because it is personally identifiable information. So social security number, date of birth shouldn't be sent to us via email. We'll call you, or you can call us, and we can get that information over the phone. When you're ready, you can just hit save and continue. That will take you on to the next screen. We'll go ahead and show you that here this way. So when you came in here to make a change to an existing employee, you'd pull up your district. Obviously, not all of you are going to have as many options as I do. Some of you may have multiple districts. A lot of you only have one, so you'll just select your district in a drop down. You'll search for the employee you're looking for, and then it's going to bring you up to their assignment screen. So again, when you go through staff SAU search, find a staff member, you can't get to that first screen, so that you have to do staff search for that one. As you can see here, there's existing positions. You can either add a new assignment or edit an existing position. We're going to go ahead and add a new assignment. Position start date does matter. If you do a future start date, they're not going to show up in any of the reports until that start date. So it won't affect anything until that point. We're going to use today's date. We're going to do a special ed teacher assignment because that is the one that has the most options. So now on years of experience, it's going to be whatever previous experience they have. If I was new coming into this position, it would be 0. If I had previous experience, whether it's in a different state or not, that would qualify as years of experience to enter into here. So if I had 10 years of experience, you'd put that in. Don't, so I'm going to put in 0. Your next option is W-2 employee or contractor. If you choose contractor, it takes away any of the salary information, so you don't have to worry about that any longer. If you do W employee, it's going to ask you for it. Then you're going to pick your school and your subject matter. Again, you're going to want to be as subject specific as you can. So that ties into what I was talking about this morning with professional development. If there's any professional development opportunities and they don't have subject specific information, that could affect them getting that professional development. So we're going to choose special education on this one, special education for course, and then whatever grades. Multiple grades can be selected, or a singular grade. You can also add courses if you need to. That ties in more for regular teachers. You're going to select the FTE for the position. That's going to be the amount of time they're going to be working in this position. If it's half-time, you're going to choose 0.5, full-time 0.1, anything in between. It's kind of your discretion here what you're going to choose, but this does tie into your percentage of FTE going down. We'll talk about that when we get there. Is federal funding a payment source for the position? Yes, no. If you choose yes, it's going to give you a drop down and you're going to select your funding source. A note here is that 2 new funding sources have been added. That is ESSER, which is Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Funding, and CRF, which is the Coronavirus Relief Fund. There's going to be a communication from the Commissioner's Office going out shortly that's going to go into more detail what those are and what they entail. So be on the lookout for that. I'm not going to go into too much detail for those. But if it was federal funding, you choose the one that it would be. For this one, likely going to be a title position or not. We're just going to say no. And then the educational category, you're going to pick special education because special education teacher, but that's going to be dependent on what you're picking. Once you do that, it's going to open up disabilities for this assignment, and you're going to pick any disabilities that this teacher will be dealing with throughout the year in this position. Then you're getting a question for, do the duties of your position include the provision or service students aged 3 to 20 who are receiving special education? That's yes or no. You say yes, this is where the percentage of FTE comes in. You click on this question mark, it's going to give you a breakdown of kind of what that means. So basically saying if it's full-time, it's 100%, half-time would be 50%. If it's a quarter, it's 25%. That formula is basically whatever FTE you choose times 0.5, which gives you a decimal, which you then convert to a percent. So if 1/3 of the time I was working with students with disability, it would be 1/3 times 0.5, which ends up being 0.16 repeating, which converts to 17%. Since I said 1, we're going to do 100%. The next question is a staff member highly qualified or qualified? Highly qualified being for special ed teachers, qualified for ed techs. This is basically, do they have a degree or not? If you say no, they're not going to show up on certain reports. So the staff certification, you know, that'll come into play here. It's not going to show them as being an EPS. If you choose no, you say yes, it'll play in. If you say yes, but on that first screen you didn't choose a degree, or you chose GED, one or the other, it's still going to have an effect. So you'd have to, if you say yes, you're going to have to go back, and then you go look at the report and they're not showing up, you're going to have to go back and modify that degree field. And then of
Hey,
course the content. Yes.
It's Ryan. Can you just hover over those two question marks to
Yeah.
show them that? Because we get these questions a lot, and a lot of times the answer to your questions on what constitutes HQT are answered if you hover over these question marks. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I did highlight the question mark hurry up, so, but that's a great point to put out here, especially for this one. It's a little confusing. So as you can see here, a highly qualified special ed teacher is 1, they've obtained a full Maine certification. 2, they have not had a special ed certification or license requirement waived. Or 3, they hold at least a bachelor's degree. The second mark here, which is for ed tech, and it's 1, hold an appropriate state certification or licensure position, or are in a position for which no state requirements exist, no certification or license requirements are needed. So that would be a yes. If they don't fall in any of those, it would be a no. And then we get down here to the bottom for contact information. This again ties into what I was talking to this morning about contact information. Whatever you put in here for contact information becomes public facing, and anyone can come into NEO and go to that contact search and pull up a special ed teacher, a regular teacher, a director of technology, any of that. All of those are contact searches that someone can pull up and find. If this information isn't correct and someone sends out an email that pertains to special ed teachers or regular teachers, this person may not get that if the email information isn't correct. I've seen it before where people have just put in one contact information for everyone in the district, and then that one person got contacted for anyone who we sent out information for, or another department in the DOE sent out for. So you really want to make sure this contact information is correct as you can get it. If you don't know what the information is, you can always save this position as pending and then come back to it. When you go to SAU search, you can actually filter on pending. I'll show you that in a minute. So let's go ahead and save this as pending. And that pending applies to any of this information. Like if you weren't sure what their salary was or what special disabilities they're working with, you could save this as pending. And as you can see here, I have a pending status now. So if I was to go back to SAU search, you'll see that I have a pending position. So you can easily filter on these to figure out later down the road if you have someone who's pending, and then you'd be able to go back in and finish editing that assignment. And that's a lot better than you just canceling out and having to restart from scratch, especially if you're adding in a new employee, because then you have to go through the process of putting in their social security number and all that other information. So I can click on the actions and click edit, or I could delete it if later on down the road you decide you didn't need it, and finish. So I'll go ahead and put my contact information in. If I had an extension, I'd put that in again, kind of a pet peeve of mine. If I need to call someone, especially like a data specialist for an enrollment fix, it's so much easier if I have an extension. Typically, I'll try, if I don't see an extension, I'll try email first, because I really just like going through the school Rolodex to find someone, listening to all the options. So I'll go ahead and hit submit this. And then you can see it's one of my active positions. You can see it's my only EPS position. Actually, it's a no. EPS for librarian. Because I said I wasn't highly qualified, so I said no, so that didn't mark me as an EPS. If I want to put myself on a leave of absence, or you need to put someone on a leave of absence, you can do this here. And again, you can access someone through staff search or SAU search. You come in here, their assignment drop down, you can put them on a leave of absence. If you put someone on a leave of absence, you can't go back and fix it. That is to say, if you put someone accidentally in a leave of absence, they're stuck in a leave of absence until they come back. We don't have a way to end a leave of absence early. You can also end the assignment. The assignment will give you an end date, which I can put in. I can do a future end date, or I can do today's date. I'll say 8/5. So if I said 8/5 or anything past, it's going to be an active position until that end date, and it'll automatically end it. So I will pick that, and you need to make sure you hit confirmed and assignment. If you don't, it's going to error out, just like that. This is also, again, this is saying this is going to permanently terminate the assignment by checking the confirmation box. So when I do and hit end, it terminates the position. If you want to go back and look at someone's ended position data, you can pull them up. They're still an active employee. If not, you're going to have to do staff search. But when you come into their assignments, you can change the status. All is kind of incorrect because it's only going to show you all their active assignments. So I can filter on active, inactive, ending, pending, and on leave. So if I go to ended, you'll see all my ended positions. You can see here, there's a few that I've tested things with. Then we can go to inactive and you'll see all my inactive. I think you guys get the picture here, but you can filter. So if you wanted to know information on an ended assignment, you can go back to those and see those. Those aren't technically gone forever when you end them. There is a way to access those. Next up, we're going to take a look at the staff certification report, which is right here underneath certification. This is going to list quite a bit of information, and this is where you're going to be when you need to certify your staff. So you've got positions, which lists all of our positions. You've got the number of active staff and the number of active positions. These numbers aren't necessarily going to be the same because you can have multiple staff in one position, or you can have inactive members of a position versus number of active staff. So those aren't always going to line up. They don't need to. Then next you have total FTE, which is the total number of FTE in all of those positions. And then you have total EPS FTE, which is the total amount of EPS FTE. So there, as you know, that there is EPS versus non-EPS. So that's where those two come into play. And then you have the number of pending positions. That's another place where you can see. So you can see, oh, I have a bus driver who's pending. You could go to SAU search, pull up all your employees, filter on pending, bring them to the top, and fix what, for whatever reason why they're pending, you can fix that. You can view the positions here. So if you click on view positions, it's going to show you everyone who's got that position, as well as whether they're active or not, and if they're school versus district, they'll list it here if they're out of school versus the district. Back to the report. Another nice little note there. I would always recommend right-clicking and opening that in a new tab because there is no way to go back. You can see you'll filter through here. You can see everybody who's listed. Then the second box here is EPS staff. It's going to give you their actual EPS totals based on all of these fields. So that's another verification you're going to want to do for your EPS data. We kind of sum that up for you there. It ties into some of the other reports I'll go over. Next up, you have your district roles. This is all your primary positions in the district that we might send information directly to. So again, this ties into the updating contact from this morning. If you have to make a change here, you can do it at any point in the year by making the change in the dropdown and saving it. So you're going to want to make sure these are always up to date to the best of your ability, because, for example, the assessment coordinator, if that's not right when it comes to assessment time in the spring, whoever's listed there is going to start getting information from the assessment team. And if it's not accurate, whoever is primarily doing that role isn't going to get the information they need. Whoever's listed here for the data specialist is who's going to show up in the contact search for primary SAU contacts for data specialists. I know there are different data specialists within certain districts. There's a local data specialist and a state data specialist. So you're going to want to make sure the state data specialist is the one that's listed here if you have multiple people in that position. Again, Mike and I are listed as data specialists. So if Mike was the local and I was the state, or vice versa, you're going to want to make sure whoever's the state is listed there. The superintendent can go in as the librarian or nurse if you don't have one. So that can be listed there. We don't currently have a superintendent listed in Neo UAT, so there's no option here. July it's blank. We have some other ones here. So this one was missing, so I'll go ahead and add it and then save it. It does take a bit of time to save. You get this little pop up with a broken image link saying, say data, please wait. Can take a few minutes. You get notified when it is done. When it comes to staff certification, again, in November, once you've verified all this is correct, you say the designees, the certification will light up at the bottom for the superintendent to certify. Once they click certify, their name shows up with the date in which they did certify. Next up is reports. We've got staff details by courses, staff details by FTE, FTE by person. We have a new report as of this year, which is the minimum teacher salary certification report. That's showing you anyone who does not meet the minimum teacher salary qualifications that have recently been put out. You can use that report to verify them. If someone shows up in the report, fix them. That's pretty basic, pretty simple there. If you have any further questions on that one specifically, you can reach out to the finance team. Next up is staff with multiple positions. You've got staff EPS report for district and district by position. The biggest one you're probably going to be using is courses and FTE. There's not going to be a lot of information in here for us. Go ahead and take a look at that. And all these reports, as well as our user manual, is all located on the help desk. Sorry, sidetracked myself a little bit there, but I just want to show this real quick before I forget. You go to the help desk, we have staff data entry guide field. If you go into that, we've got all of these. Appendix B gives a breakdown of all of the federal funded positions. So there's a description of the 2 new federal funding in there for the CFR and ESSER. You've got course codes and descriptions for CTE, career and technical for CTE, staff EPS FTE report instructions, staff job position descriptions. It's probably going to be one that's used a lot, because that's going to show you the descriptions of all our positions. So when you're creating a new assignment and you're trying to figure out what this person does, because a lot of districts have titles that are different than ours, you're going to be trying to figure out what fits into the bucket. So if you have someone who's a student liaison teacher relations or something like that, something we don't have listed, it's going to boil down to what does that person actually do. So do they do in the description of something we already have listed? If so, that's what they're going to be listed as. We're not likely to create a new position for you, so you're going to want to look at that appendix G and see, does what they do fit in here? If not, then you can contact the help desk. We'll help you look through it and try to figure out what best fits their position. But that's your best bet to figure out where someone goes. We'll go back to the report. So as you can see here in the report, For staff FTE, just lists all their information down to their years of experience, what school they're at, their education level, their contact information, any licenses they hold, what their employment type is. And then this report, if you click on this little disk icon, this can be pulled into multiple different options. So a lot of you who have a lot of staff, when you're trying to figure out all their information, especially if you're updating people, you can pull this into Excel, remove the headers, and filter the report. If you're not sure how to do any of that, feel free to reach out to the help desk. We're more than happy to give you some training on that. Either in a one-on-one or a quick phone call, we can go over how to pull down to Excel or any of these other ones. Excel's the easiest if you want to filter. If you just want the data to save, you can put it into a PDF or Word document. But I recommend Excel because it's going to pull everything into its own nice, neat fields, even if you don't want to filter it. We come back to here. Courses and FTE are kind of the same. So it's going to give you the same information. So you can see by switching back and forth, the only real difference here is it adds in grades and courses. So it's dependent on what you're looking at and what you want. This is going to give you the most bang for your buck. But again, that's for fields you have to filter through and scroll through if you want to pull it, or just look at that report here.
Hey, Drew, can you circle back to the minimum teacher salary? And Kathy, if you're still on this meeting, I believe you had something you wanted to add as far as clarification in regards to that report.
Kathy muted.
Yes, sorry about that, I was. I just wanted to clarify on the minimum teacher salary report that you may indeed see errors on the report. That's part of the reason for showing it to you. But if all of your salaries and FTEs are being reflected correctly, what you're going to see on the report and certify is that the people there are the correct people who qualify for the adjustment. And then that adjustment amount that's on that report is what you'll be getting in your 279 as a minimum teacher salary adjustment for those teachers. So having somebody on the report doesn't indicate they need necessarily that they need to be corrected. It just may mean that that is what they're getting paid and they do qualify for the adjustment.
All right, thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome.
I think that just about covers it, unless I missed something, Ryan or Kathy, that you're aware of.
Nope, sounded great from here.
Okay. I wasn't intending to go over long-term sub positions again this year. If anyone does have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to the help desk. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you have. Between last year's summer training and this year, there wasn't really a lot of issues with them. So good job, everybody. But again, if you do have questions, feel free to reach out to us. I'm more than happy to answer them.
Hey, Drew.
Yeah.
It's Ryan again. Can you go over, because we do get a lot of questions on certification when they're unable to certify. It's due usually to them either having pending positions that they need to clear up, and as well as having notes in the notes column of, and I forget which report it is. I think it's the FTE one.
I'll get to those questions in a second. Sorry, everybody. So yeah, I think it is this one. Sorry, distracting me.
Sorry, Drew. Trevor and I are harassing you in Teams.
I see that.
No worries.
And I think we have the librarian, so I don't think this is on. I can never remember which one shows the notes. It's courses. Needs review is no, yes. So yeah, if you come into either courses or staff details FDE, scroll all the way to the end. Needs review is what Brian was referring to for notes. And it is pretty specific on what it needs, and it'll tell you, and then you'll just go into that person's assignment through staff search and make that change. Sometimes it's on that first page, sometimes it's not. It's easier just to go through the staff search, pull them up, and go through each screen and make sure everything's correct. But if someone comes up in staff certification as having a note when you go to view their positions, you're going to come into the staff details report by courses or FTE, scroll all the way to the end and look at the needs review, and it'll tell you what needs to be done. That will stop you from certifying, as well as Ryan said, any pending positions, which is a lot more obvious because it'll tell you the number of pending positions here. That will show up here, as well as if you have any missing district roles, it will tell you you won't be able to certify. The bond will be grayed out. I believe all of those are mentioned in the staff certification instructions we have underneath the staff data reporting on the help desk. And I do go over that as well on the training video I made for staff certification, which is underneath webinar and presentations. So we do go over that a little bit, but like Ryan said, perfect time to mention it now here as well. So if you're missing any district roles, you have any pending positions, or there's anyone who's flagged as needs review, it will stop you from certifying. So those are the three major points you want to hit if you can't see the certify button, the superintendent can't see the certify button rather. If you still are not sure what's going on, feel free to reach out to the help desk. Again, so I think that covers everything. So I'll switch over to fielding questions now. Go ahead and pull that up. What is going on? Sorry, everyone, having a slight snafu here. Ryan, is there a reason I can only see staff and not attendees?
Are you looking for attendees or questions?
Well, if I go,
You should be able to see him now.
thank you.
Thanks, Trevor.
Pop that out. All right, so the first question is from Rosemary, and it is, does the system still time you out? I noticed it times you out very quickly. Yes, that is actually not Neo, that is a browser default. It times you out after 15 minutes. And if it times you out repeatedly, you then get into the issue where you try to log in and the screen will flash. A lot of people misconstrue that as being blocked out of Neo, when in fact, it's the browser cache issue. So if you get timed out multiple times and then you try to log in and the screen flashes, all you need to do is clear your browser cache, completely close out your browser, reopen it, and you can log back into Neo. So I know a lot of times people are trying to do stuff. Like if you're in a staff assignment screen and you take more than 15 minutes, you're technically still on the same screen. Whereas if you're clicking around in the menus, like, going from staff search to staff certification, that resets the 15-minute timer. But if you maintain on one screen for too long, it will time you out, and that timeout is 15 minutes. Can you explain the difference for years of experience and CTE professional years of experience from Jackie? Yes, I'm sorry about that. Years of experience is the years of experience in the teaching field. CTE years of professional years of experience is the experience in which they have their experience in their certified field. So if they've never been a teacher before, but they've been a welder for 15 years, that's the difference. They would be a 0 in years of experience for teaching, but they would be a 15 for CTE professional years of experience because they've been licensed as a welder for 15 years. That's just an example. It could be a plumber, electrician, a cook, any of those. So the difference is teaching versus their licensed field of experience. Next up is Marsha with, I have staff member who was mistakenly entered twice and has 2 accounts. Should I call the help desk to consolidate? Yes. Email the help desk or call us and we can help you resolve that one-on-one. And if anyone gets that, definitely give us a call and we can help with that. And another point there is that if you accidentally put in the social security number or date of birth incorrectly, I know I already mentioned this, but if you're entering that data in and you get it wrong, call or email the help desk and let us know. If you call, we can deal with it right then. If you email, do not include the date of birth and or social security number. Just let us know that that was a mistake and we'll call you or have you call us. Excuse me. Next question is from Susan. And it is, I work at a SPPS and a public school contract with speech providers to send us provided services. Do I put them into NEO under my staff or does the public school enter them into NEO? That's one I get a lot, but I can never seem to remember. Ryan, can you help me out here?
Yeah, so normally we would say we want to know where the individual is actually located while they're providing services. But when it comes to these contracted services that are being paid for by the public schools, we strongly urge the public schools to put them in. It's for budgeting purposes. And it does, like I say, kind of fly in the faces to where we're always kind of pushing for people to report employees out to where they're physically providing the services. But this is a slightly different case since these students are being sent to you, or that these contracted services providers are being sent to you by the public school district. So long story short, the public school district should be entering in these contracted service providers.
Thank you. Next question is a follow-up from Rosemary. Is there a way to extend the time for the timeout? No, it's a built-in browser security feature. So there's no way for us to extend it. Maybe contact Google, but good luck with that. So yeah, it is what it is. You kind of have to deal with it and work around it. Just remember that if you're working on a staff assignment and you think you're near the 15 minutes, you can always hit save as pending and go back into it. If you're just stepping away from your computer, I always recommend logging out of NEO completely. When I'm working in NEO, I'll log in, do what I need to do and log out, even if I know I'm gonna come right back to it, especially if I'm answering footprints tickets, our ticketing system, where you guys email us. If I'm giving someone access or updating their access, I'll do it, log out, even if the next ticket is asking for someone else to be updated or have access. So I always just try to log in and out. That's how I avoid it. So we'll go ahead and leave this open for a few more minutes. We'll go to 1:45. If there's any more questions, feel free to ask them. If anyone wants me to go over anything again, feel free to ask. I don't mind taking the time and go over anything I presented again. If you need to ask a question and you don't, for whatever reason, don't want to ask it in here, feel free to email or call the help desk. Any of the questions that come into the help desk will be put into the Q&A section when we upload this webinar. Patty asks, how close is the state in changing to uploads from payroll HR software? Kathy, you have any insight into that? or Ryan. Kathy isn't here.
No, I'm here. I'm sorry. I lost my mouse and couldn't unmute myself. Too many screens is what it amounts to. So we are still actively in discussion about uploads, especially for staff. We do recognize that it's one of the single most, important time savers people would really like to have. Yeah, I have no promises on time frame, but it will be an ongoing discussion this year, extended from our discussion from last spring, in how we can best do it. We still have some changes that we'd like to make to staff to simplify it, to prepare it to be an easier upload and a more straightforward one. From a data entry perspective, the way these screens are set up, it could be a little bit smoother for you guys, based on my own personal experience with that. So that's not quite as much of a detailed answer as I'd like to be able to give, but it's at least a year away. I mean, it's clearly not happening for this year. It's still possible for next year, but I don't know, depending on other things that need to get done, whether it will end up happening in that time frame.
Thank you. Lori asks, sorry, late to the webinar. You may have already answered this. When we input coaches, what are we putting for an FTE? Seems to schools I have checked with run the gambit. Coaches are whatever. It's hard because it's seasonal, I know. As far as I know, and Ryan, correct me on this if I'm wrong, you'd want to do, if they're doing more than one season, you can combine all that into one position with one FTE. Otherwise, it's using your best judgment on their FTE. Really, it equates to, if it's one season, like if they're only going to do soccer is in the fall, so that's a couple months. So then that would be 2 or 3 on their FTE.
Correct. And that staff assignment, it's not an EPS position, so I don't want to say that the FTE doesn't matter, but there is no adverse implications to getting it wrong. Just understand that full-time equivalency is, FTE is full-time equivalency. So, I mean, if your standard work week is 40 hours and they're spending 8 hours a week for that time period, then it's a 0.2. As far as, there's some debate over, do I leave, if they're just coaching soccer, if they're doing co-curricular athletic just in the fall, should I have that staff position open year round, or should I only have that staff position open for that time period? I would say that time period for accuracy, but again, there's no adverse effects to leaving that position open all year. So there's no standard answer to that. Just understand that it is a full-time equivalency. Try to calculate it as accurately as possible. Most of them are going to end up at 0.1, just because when you look at, they're only doing this for so many weeks out of the year and so many hours for that week. When you average it out over the entire year, it's usually below 0.1, and we average up 2.1. But again, it's not an EPS FTE, so there is no negative implications to doing it wrong. So just try to get as close as you can.
Yay. Next up, we have Patty. It says, is there a report that shows complete NEO information from prior years? Seems the prior year reports only show certain positions, i.e. teachers. No, we don't retain that information on a year-to-year basis. You could pull the report for staff details report by FTE at the end of the year and pull that into Excel. That's going to have all of your positions for everyone with FTE, or you could even do courses and pull that into Excel at the end of the year and save it. I think that's as close as you're going to get. because we don't retain that information historically. And next, we have a follow-up from Lynn. So if a staff member is full-time teacher and coaches one sport, should the FTE for the teaching position be 1 and the coach position be 0.10? So you've gone over 100%. Yes, because the coaching position is an EPS. You can't go over 100% with EPS FTE. Standard, regular, non-EPS FTE can go over 100%. Next, we have a question from Sandra. And has the staff data been rolled over for 2021 yet? Yes, it has. That was rolled at the beginning of July. So you can go in and start your edits, updates, changes, corrections, whatever you want to do, you can do in there now. Add new staff as well. So that's open. You can do that now. Sandra, follow up. The position start date does not update. No. If they're rolling over, the position start date is going to be what it was when it was initially entered. If the position is ended, you can't make that start date again. You just have to put that data into the years of experience field. There are people who have been in there since staff was created in 2015, 16. Other people are in there fresh. So the position start date doesn't change because when it rolls over, they're staying. So it doesn't need to change. It's just assume that they're there still unless you end them. And again, if you accidentally end the position, you can't get that original start date back. You just need to go into the ended positions that I showed you guys and look at their information and pull their years of experience into the new position, if it's applicable. Now, Lori asks, is the certification office linked to NEO? We have had teachers who recertify certifications fingerprinting because they have worked 2 different school systems. They need to write a letter that they have worked for us for X amount of years, even though all the information is NEO. It is linked in a sense that we're checking if they're certified for their position or not. Ryan, can you speak up as to them having to do the letters?
Yeah, I would, reading this question, I would be interested to have an example sent to us at the help desk, take a look at that. There is a nightly ETL that goes 2 ways. So NEO updates MEIS, the Maine Educator Information System, which is the online system certification uses. And then there's another process that happens about 30 minutes later, that's MEIS to NEO. So they are in, I want to say constant, but there's nightly data shares that go on 365, so even on the weekends. So that shouldn't be happening. I mean, if there truly hasn't been no break in employment for the position for which they are certified, or in any position, if it's just their CHRC, that should not be occurring, and that's something that we would want to look into. So again,
Hey, Ryan.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that I'm wondering if in this situation, because there was the request for the letter, that there might have been an issue of confidentiality, like between the districts or something, and somebody, the certification office was just looking for supporting documentation or something. Because that sounds like somebody needed a letter for a file, perhaps even though they could see that it was there, but they needed like a attestation for it or something.
Well, it sounds like it's a letter of continuous employment.
Right.
That, so, I mean.
Okay, just
Yeah,
that was.
I would want to see it to try to figure it out.
Lori, if you've got a specific example, it would help us to look at it, like Ryan said.
All right, so we have the next question here is follow-up from Sandra on her previous question about the start date. Years of experience increased by 1. Yes, when we roll, years of experience automatically increases. My example was if you had to end an assignment, you couldn't get that initial start date back. So if the position was from like 2016 and you ended it, you couldn't reset them to 2016. You can only start at the earliest of July 1st of the current year. But you can get their years of experience from their ended position and add it into the new one. If it's rolling automatically, the position start date does not change, but the years of experience increases. And that's how the roll tracks that, is by the original position start date. So again, that's why you would need to add that in manually if you ended their assignment for whatever reason and recreated it, because it won't automatically track at that point. We need to know their previous years of experience. But by default, yes, it rolls. Position start date stays the same, and the year of experience increases by 1 because it's the next year. So it looks like we're back to the standstill here on questions. We'll leave it open for 1:55. Feel free to ask any more questions. If you want to look at anything again, let me know. If after we end the webinar, you have any questions, like I said, just email them or call the Medham's help desk. Lori's follow-up, wasn't sure if you want an example now, but you can keep it to yourself if you do. We'll take a look for you, but just in case it slides underneath our radar from the webinar, please, again, feel free to just shoot the Medham's help desk an email. You're welcome, Jackie. Jackie says thank you for the refresher webinar. I hope it was helpful. Was fairly quick, but again, there will be another one if you guys missed anything. And if you did miss something, let me know and I'll go over it again. Lori asks, you probably already stated this, when a report's due this year, are you asking about just in general, like the quarterly reports? When are they going to be due? Or the staff certification report? Mind providing me with a little bit of follow-up on that one? In general, as far as I know, going into the year, all our reports are going to be on time. Staff certification reports, okay, so yeah, it should be standard time it's due, which is, didn't we change that so it more aligned with October report?
No, we moved it up 2 weeks and then realized we were shooting ourselves in our own foot, and then moved it back to October 31st.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
and be mindful, unlike there's a lot of reports that we have that have what are referred to, and we'll never admit which ones are soft deadlines. In other words, we can still accept them a week or two after the official due date. This is one of the rare ones that has a hard deadline. So if you don't certify your staff by October 31st, we may be able to buy you a couple days, but that is it. So it's very important that you get all your staff in, entered, and updated before the end of October so that you're not scrambling and end up having to, and this does play into the EPS calculations. So their districts have lost subsidy due to incomplete staff reporting that they simply just did not get in time. So it is very important that this is all wrapped up by the end of October.
Thank you, Ryan.
You're welcome.
So we still have quite a bit of attendees here. I'll leave it open for a few more minutes in case anyone has any other questions they'd like to ask. All right, so it looks like everybody's starting to drop off. We'll go ahead and end the webinar. Thank you everyone for watching, and we will see you again for the next one next week.